The direction of this offense just became a lot clearer, and if you've been wondering what the Pittsburgh Steelers are about to look like under Mike McCarthy, the clues coming out of Indianapolis are impossible to ignore. With 18 combined years as an NFL head coach between Green Bay and Dallas, McCarthy arrives with a reputation that already has people around the league talking. And according to Nate Tice of Yahoo Sports and the NFL Network, Steelers fans might be underestimating exactly what kind of play caller they're getting. Tice didn't hesitate when breaking down McCarthy's offensive mind. He made it clear that McCarthy is actually a better play caller and play designer than many give him credit for. Not overrated, not riding coattails, just good. That's important, because when a coach transitions into a new situation like this, especially with a franchise like the Steelers, expectations can get distorted by narratives. But what Tice emphasized is that McCarthy's foundation is as traditional West Coast as it gets. That means you should prepare to see a heavy, quick passing game, timing routes, rhythm throws, ball out fast. And if Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback, that opens another layer entirely. Tice pointed out that Rodgers would likely have more freedom at the line of scrimmage, especially with smoke routes, those quick reads where the quarterback identifies leverage and immediately attacks it. Imagine DK Metcalf split wide, Rodgers signaling at the line, identifying coverage, and firing quickly before the defense even settles. That's not hypothetical theory. That's built into how McCarthy's offense has evolved. In fact, Tice explained that McCarthy's system has gradually morphed into something that fits Rodgers' preferences. More shotgun formations, more plays called or adjusted at the line, more autonomy for the quarterback. By default, that creates a more cohesive operation if Rodgers is under center because the structure already leans toward what he likes to do. It's not about forcing a rigid system, it's about building around the quarterback's strengths within that West Coast framework. Now here's something that might surprise some fans. The running game in this structure is more complementary. Tice described it as pass to set up the run, horizontally attacking through the air first, spreading the field, then using spread look running concepts once defenses widen to respect the perimeter. It's not a smash-mouth tight tens heavy identity, it's more about stressing coverage, stretching defenders sideline to sideline, and creating lighter boxes. And that leads directly into another key point, personnel usage. Tice expects fewer multiple to 10 formations and more wide receiver heavy sets. That's what McCarthy leaned into in Green Bay, and he maintains similar tendencies in Dallas. When he has skilled players who can win outside, he spreads you out. He trusts his quarterback, he trusts timing and spacing. That shift alone could dramatically change how the Steelers' offense looks snap to snap. But it wasn't just scheme talk in Indianapolis. Prospects were also reacting to the possibility of joining this organization. And Indiana wide receiver Elijah Surratt made it clear how he feels about Pittsburgh. Surratt, who began his college career at St. Francis in Loretto, Pennsylvania, before transferring to James Madison and eventually Indiana, didn't hold back. He called the Steelers a legendary organization. He talked about watching them since he was a kid. He said it would be a great fit and praised the culture that's been built. When asked about meeting Mike McCarthy, Surratt's respect was obvious. He mentioned hearing about McCarthy since his days coaching Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. He emphasized that McCarthy is a Super Bowl champion and described sitting down and talking with him as a great experience. For a prospect, that kind of reaction matters. It shows how McCarthy's resonates with players entering the league. Then there's what Surratt said about the possibility of playing with Rodgers. He called him a dog, a goat, a Hall of Famer. He talked about growing up watching him. That admiration wasn't surface level. When asked about back shoulder catches, Surratt revealed that during the season, he actually sent Indiana quarterback Fernando Mendoza clips of Rodgers and Davante Adams executing those precise throws at around 13 to 14 yards. He studied how Adams released off the line, how Rodgers delivered that zip back shoulder. He tried to incorporate that into his own game. That's not random. That's a young receiver already visualizing himself in that style of offense. Surratt even mentioned players like Puka Nacua as examples of receivers who consistently win on back shoulder throws. He sees it as one of his strengths, and in a West Coast system that values timing and precision on the boundary, that detail stands out. Meanwhile, the athletic testing numbers in Indianapolis are telling their own story. Ohio State safety Lorenzo Styles Jr. ran a 4.27 in the 40-yard dash, the fastest among defensive players at the Combine, and the fastest by a safety since 2003. That kind of range changes defensive geometry. Robert Spears-Jennings, Traden Stukes, and Dylan Thieneman also posted sub 4.36 times, highlighting how much speed is entering the defensive backpool. Missouri cornerback Toriano Pride Jr. led his position group at 4.32 across the board, averaged 40 times for defensive linemen, linebackers, defensive backs, and tight ends were the fastest since 2003. And speaking of tight ends, Oregon's Kenyon Sadiq delivered rare athleticism at 6'3" and an eighth and 241 pounds, running a 4.39 and jumping over 43 inches vertically. That combination of size and explosion is uncommon, especially at that weight. Even if the Steelers lean less on multiple tight end looks, athletic profiles like that show how the league is evolving. So when you step back and look at everything coming out of Indianapolis, you see a bigger picture forming. A West Coast foundation, heavy shotgun usage, quick game emphasis, wide receiver-driven spacing, quarterback autonomy, prospects who already study Rodgers' tape and talk about Pittsburgh's culture with genuine respect, and an incoming wave of defensive speed that will challenge offenses to be precise and decisive. The identity shift feels real. The scheme clues are concrete. The player reactions are authentic. Now the biggest question becomes this. If this offense truly takes on that Rodgers-influenced West Coast shape, do you believe it elevates the Steelers immediately, or does it require the perfect quarterback situation to truly unlock its full potential? Because here's where this becomes even more fascinating. If the Steelers truly commit to this West Coast identity under Mike McCarthy, it's not just about adding plays to a playbook. It's about reshaping how defenses have to prepare for Pittsburgh every single week. The emphasis on quick passing, spacing, and pre-snap freedom forces defensive coordinators to defend the entire width of the field from the opening snap. When you combine that with a quarterback who can diagnose coverage at the line and adjust into favorable matchups, the stress on opposing secondaries multiplies instantly. Think about what Nate Tice described regarding shotgun usage and more plays being signaled or altered at the line of scrimmage. That's tempo control without necessarily snapping the ball faster. It's mental pressure if Aaron Rodgers is the one executing that structure. You're talking about a veteran who has made a career out of manipulating leverage, identifying single coverage, and punishing hesitation. Giving him autonomy inside a framework that already aligns with his preferences doesn't just make the offense functional, it makes it layered. And when Tice explained that McCarthy's offense has gradually morphed toward Rodgers' tendencies, that detail shouldn't be overlooked. This isn't a rigid coach demanding adaptation at all costs. It's an offensive mind who has shown the ability to evolve alongside his quarterback. That flexibility could be critical, because the Steelers are not just installing plays, they are building an ecosystem where quarterback intelligence and receiver precision become the centerpiece. Now, bring DK Metcalf back into that picture. In a system that leans heavily on wide receiver formations rather than multiple tight ends, Metcalf's role becomes even more pronounced. Smoke routes, quick perimeter reads, isolation matchups, those are high-efficiency touches. If defenses crowd the box expecting the run, the ball comes out immediately to the outside. If corners play off coverage, it's easy yards. That's the horizontal stress Tice referenced. Stretch first, force width, then counter with spread look runs once the defense thins out. And that run game philosophy is important. It's not about abandoning the ground attack, it's about sequencing pass to set up the run. Spread formations that naturally lighten the box. When linebackers widen and safeties hesitate because of vertical threats, running lanes become cleaner. It's strategic rather than brute force. That approach can preserve efficiency over 4 quarters instead of relying purely on physical wear-down tactics. But what might be most intriguing from Indianapolis is how prospects are already visualizing themselves in this structure. Elijah Sarrett's comments weren't generic draft season praise. He referenced studying back shoulder throws, specifically from Rodgers and Davante Adams. He talked about watching Adams release at 13 to 14 yards before Rodgers delivered that precise zip to the boundary. That's advanced detail for a college receiver to highlight unprompted. It shows awareness of timing, leverage, and trust between quarterback and receiver. When Sarrett mentioned sending clips to Fernando Mendoza during the season to replicate that chemistry, it revealed preparation. It revealed intentional growth. And in a West Coast system where anticipation and trust are everything, receivers who already understand that nuance have a head start. Add in his enthusiasm about the Steelers' culture and his respect for Mike McCarthy's resume as a Super Bowl champion, and you can see why those meetings at the Combine matter beyond formal interviews. At the same time, the athletic explosion on display in Indianapolis cannot be ignored. Lorenzo Styles Jr.'s for 27.40 was not just fast, it was historically significant among safeties since 2003. That kind of closing speed changes passing windows. Robert Spears-Jennings, Traden Stukes, and Dylan Thieneman all dipping under 4.36 reinforces that the defensive back group entering the league is faster than ever. Missouri's Toriano Pride Jr. running 4.32 at corner adds another layer of perimeter speed. Why does that matter to Pittsburgh? Because if the offense leans heavily into quick game and wide splits, precision becomes non-negotiable. Defensive backs with elite recovery speed erase sloppy timing, Tight ends like Kenyon Sadiq, who ran a 4.39 at 241 pounds and jumped over 43 inches, showed that even traditionally bigger positions are now blending size with rare explosiveness. The league is accelerating. Offenses must stay sharp to maintain advantages. So what we're seeing is a collision of evolution on both sides of the ball. A Steelers offense potentially shifting toward heavy shotgun, quick reads, and receiver-driven spacing. A draft class loaded with speed in the secondary. Prospects like Surratt openly envisioning themselves catching back-shoulder fades from Rodgers in black and gold, and an offensive coordinator with nearly 2 decades of head coaching experience who has already proven he can adapt his system around elite quarterback play. This isn't a surface-level adjustment. It's philosophical, it's structural, it's about identity. And if everything aligns the quarterback situation, the personnel acquisitions, the installation of McCarthy's preferred formations, this offense could look very different from what Steelers fans have grown accustomed to in recent years. But here's the challenge. Adaptation takes timing. Chemistry isn't automatic. Autonomy at the line only works if everyone processes information at the same speed. Receivers must read leverage the same way the quarterback does. Protection must hold long enough for adjustments to unfold. The margin for error shrinks as complexity rises. So now it circles back to you. If this West Coast evolution truly takes hold, built on quick game precision, quarterback freedom, and receiver spacing, do you believe the current roster has the right pieces to maximize it immediately? Or does this vision demand one more major move before it can fully click? And let's take this one step further, because scheme alone doesn't win games in January. Execution under pressure does. If the Steelers move toward this more quarterback-driven West Coast structure, the defining factor won't simply be how it looks in September, it will be how it responds when defenses disguise coverage, when safeties rotate late, when corners press and disrupt timing at the line. That's where quarterback command becomes everything. The freedom to call smoke routes, adjust protections, and flip concepts at the line sounds exciting, but it requires total alignment. The center must recognize the same pressure indicators. The receivers must understand sight adjustments. The running back must scan correctly in protection. In this system, mental mistakes are magnified because the ball is supposed to come out on rhythm. If it doesn't, spacing collapses. Now think about how that impacts roster decisions moving forward. If wide receiver heavy formations become the norm, depth at that position becomes critical. You're not just asking 1 or 2 receivers to win, you're asking 3 and sometimes 4 to execute precise routes snap after snap. Conditioning, football IQ, and chemistry matter as much as raw speed. And that brings us back to why the combine conversations matter. When Elijah Surratt talks about studying back-shoulder timing from Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams, he's not just complimenting a Hall of Fame quarterback, he's showing he understands nuance. In a West Coast system, the back shoulder isn't just a highlight play, it's a coverage beater. It punishes tight man coverage without requiring perfect separation. That kind of detail translates, but let's also acknowledge something important. If Rodgers is not the quarterback, the system still leans West Coast. It still emphasizes rhythm and spacing. However, the level of autonomy may shift depending